We will hone our public speaking skills by examining some of the hits and misses from this week's first presidential debate. But first, I'm Joy Cardine with Cheryl Gasser, and this is Wisconsin Public Radio's Fall Membership Drive. Well, right now, let's talk about how we can improve our own public speaking skills by what we learned from the candidates at the first presidential debate earlier this week. What do you think were some of the best moments from this week's debate? Maybe some of the worst. We will use the debate to get some tips on how we might be better public speakers. And we welcome your thoughts at 1-800-642-1234 or send an email to talk@wpr.org. You can also post on the Joy Cardine Show Facebook page or tweet us at Joy Cardine Show. Our guest is Gleb Tsipursky, an assistant professor in the history of behavioral science at Ohio State University and president of Intentional Insights, a nonprofit that helps people reach their goals using science to build an altruistic and flourishing world. He has had some work published in Time and the Huffington Post, among others, and he is the author of the book, Find Your Purpose Using Science. He recently wrote a piece for The Conversation, which prompted our conversation today, Trump and Clinton debate strategies that can make anyone a better public speaker. Good morning.
Hello there, and thank you so much for having me on the show.
Thank you for joining us. So both conservative and liberal pundits declared that Hillary Clinton was the winner of Tuesday's debate. However, you pointed out in another piece that you wrote for The Conversation that the pundits got it wrong. Why is that?
So, I think that Hillary Clinton definitely won on the substance. She had a better command of policy. She had a better command of details. She had a clear plan. She had clear structure of her arguments, and she was able to convey her messages clearly in terms of policy details. However, she had trouble engaging emotionally with the audience, and this is a fundamental aspect of public speaking. Most of our connection with the audience, the way we influence the audience, is through nonverbals, not the content of what we say, but how we say it. Our tone of voice, our gestures, and so on. And these are things that I think Trump overall did better on, and I think he connected better with the audience. So I think the pundits, in general, pay too little attention to such charisma, to such emotional intelligence. If you look at the kind of things that they're praising Clinton for, it's command of policy, command of details, whereas Trump, they don't notice the kind of emotional intelligence and charisma that Trump projected during the debate.
All right, so those are the pundits. What typically influences the public when it comes to debates like this?
So the public is influenced by all the factors involved, both the content and what is said and the style, the charisma. So it's hard to say what the final outcome will be. There are polls are coming out right now that show that most of the public overall believe that Clinton won the debate, but there's some indication that there is more enthusiasm among Trump supporters for Trump's performance. So it may be the case that while Clinton won the debate on the substance, on the content, she's not necessarily perceived as being more likable, and didn't inspire as much enthusiasm as Trump did. And this ability to inspire enthusiasm is more important in the end than the winning by technical details, because it's enthusiasm that gets voters to go to the polls and vote. So we'll have to see in the next few days, as the head-to-head polls come in, who actually influenced the public most in the debate. My point was that the pundits who called for who said that Clinton won decisively are not correct.
Well, let me ask you about some things that aren't necessarily speaking style, but related.
Sure.
Donald Trump, in his very first answer, which actually a lot of the political commentators thought he maybe won the first half of the first part of the debate based on the content. He was sniffing through the whole thing and sniffing throughout the debate, and it was distracting. And he blamed the microphone, and nobody was really sure why he was sniffing so much. He's done that in the past. Isn't that didn't that distract people? Didn't that annoy people?
Yes, I mean, there are certainly things that he did not do well, and the sniffing is definitely one of them. You can see on Twitter the hashtag Trump sniffles for how people make fun of that right now. So he drank water quickly, he sniffled, and there were a few other body gestures that were not well handled for influencing the public well. There were many others that did influence the public quite well. So that were aimed at conveying emotions of anger and appealing to anger and frustration, which is a strong component of Trump's base, and appealing to people's fears and anxieties and trying to calm them and relieve them, and saying that he will be a strong protective figure who will address these fears and anxieties. So he conveyed that image. And that is despite some of these sniffles, he still succeeded in doing so.
Yeah. And what about the interruptions? Somebody counted them, I don't remember, but he interrupted Hillary Clinton, maybe at least twice as many times. Is that a distraction, or do his supporters actually think that shows that he's, got a command of it all? Yes,
so Trump overall interrupted Hillary Clinton 51 times and the moderator 4 times, whereas Hillary Clinton made only 17 interruptions. So vastly more for Trump, not necessarily in a good way. It depends on how you look at it. So his supporters perceive that as representative of Trump's anger and Trump's frustration, his conveyance of his emotions, him being strong, authoritarian, kind of this male patriarchal figure. And to them, that's appealing. Hillary Clinton, if she did the same things as Trump, she would not be able to have nearly as positive of feedback from the audience, because women in our society, due to what research shows are the norms of social expression, emotional expression in our society. When women express anger and frustration, women in leadership positions, they're perceived as being emotionally unstable, and they are not seen as good leaders. Whereas men, when they express fear and frustration and anger, are seen as strong and authoritative leaders. So there's that gender disparity, that gender gap in emotional expression that hinders women from tapping the full range of publicly available emotions. And anger and fear are the 2 most important motivating emotions for human activities, 2 of the most for human activities. And so Hillary being unable to tap that anger and fear due to her being a woman and therefore knowing she will be perceived as emotionally unstable really hinders her capacity in this election cycle.
Jerry on Facebook says, I liked the shoulder shimmy. She was so in control of the debate. What about that? So what about the shoulder shimmy? She did, of course, do that after Donald Trump accused her of not having the temperament to be president, and then she said, okay, woo, and then she had a shoulder shimmy. Was that a good move, a bad move? What did you make of that?
So that one depends, again, on the partisanship of the viewer. So viewers would overall, who perceive Clinton favorably, would see it as a good, strong move. Kind of, she was able to take control of the situation and not dial down, not submit to Trump's criticism, and instead she was able to essentially shake it off. That song, "Shake It Off." So she was able to shake it off and present herself calmly and respond. In a couple of other instances, she didn't do as good a job. So I think she handled herself overall quite well in that instance, and in many other instances of Trump's attacks. In several other instances, she didn't do as well. We can talk about other instances when she didn't do as well. I think we'll play a clip on the show.
Yeah, in fact, this is a good time for us to take our break, and when we come back, we will play some of Hillary Clinton's best moments and some of Donald Trump's best moments, and we will welcome your thoughts and questions for our guest about how we can improve our own public speaking skills through what we saw and heard in the first presidential debate this week. 1-800-642-1234 or send an email to talk@wpr.org. I'm Joy Cardine. This is the Ideas Network. We are talking about what we can learn from the first presidential debate in terms of public speaking. How can we become better public speakers from what we saw and heard on the debate? What do you think? What do you think were some of the best moments or maybe some of the worst moments? 1-800-642-1234 or send an email to talk@wpr.org. You can also post on the Joy Cardine Show Facebook page or tweet us at Joy Cardine Show. We are talking with Gleb Tsipursky, who is an assistant professor in the history of behavioral science at Ohio State University and president of Intentional Insights. He recently wrote 2 pieces for The Conversation: Trump and Clinton Debate Strategies That can make anyone a better public speaker, and why the pundits are wrong about Hillary Clinton dominating the debate. And I know you mentioned, Gleb, we asked you for some of the best and worst moments in your opinion, and we did pull some clips. Let's take a listen to some of those. Here's a clip of Hillary Clinton near the beginning of the debate. Let's take a listen to this.
Beginning with you, Secretary Clinton, why are you a better choice than your opponent to create the kinds of jobs that will put more money into the pockets of American workers?
Well, thank you, Lester, and thanks to Hofstra for hosting us. The central question in this election is really what kind of country we want to be and what kind of future we'll build together. Today is my granddaughter's 2nd birthday, so I think about this a lot.
So why is this an example of what she did well?
Yes, this is a great example of what Hillary did well. So we all know, some of us who were following the debate preparations knew that Hillary spent a lot of time preparing for the debate compared to Donald Trump. So she spent a lot of time really figuring out what her strategy will be and what she needs to do to convey emotions and influence people well. And she's been long perceived as cold, distant, inauthentic for some of the reasons that we talked about earlier, for the challenges that women have with emotional expression in our public sphere, and also for other reasons. For she focuses really well on policy, but not so much on the warm parts of politics and conveying emotions. And we see that in the first moment of the debate, in a clearly prepared line, she talked about her granddaughter's birthday. And that's meant to help her seem more approachable, help her seem like she really cares, and that she thinks about jobs, and that she connects it to her daughter's birthday, to the future granddaughter's birthday, to the future of our society. So she really cares. That's the message that's meant to be conveyed there. And one of the fundamental aspects of good public speaking is preparation. So preparing, being able to deliver lines well, and that preparation really told in this first moment of the debate when Hillary Clinton started with this emotional story.
Well, let's take a listen now to Donald Trump speaking about NAFTA, another example of one of his speaking strengths. Let's take a listen to that.
You go to Ohio, Pennsylvania, you go anywhere you want, Secretary Clinton, and you will see devastation where manufacturing is down 30, 40, sometimes 50%. NAFTA is the worst trade deal maybe ever signed anywhere, but certainly ever signed in this country. And now you want to approve Trans-Pacific Partnership. You were totally in favor of it. Then you heard what I was saying, how bad it is, and you said, I can't win that debate. But you know that if you did win, you would approve that, and that will be almost as bad as NAFTA. Nothing will ever top NAFTA.
So why was that an example of what Trump did well?
So we can go back to the themes that we talked about in the first part of the show of Trump conveying anger and frustration. So here he talked in an aggressive way, with anger and frustration in his voice about NAFTA. He connected it to voters who are in the crucial swing states like Ohio, that are fundamentally important for winning the election. And he really connected with them well. He talked to their needs. He talked to jobs being lost. Now, there's actually research showing that after NAFTA, manufacturing jobs increased rather than decreased. So the claim that NAFTA caused the loss of jobs is not accurate on the factual side of things. But he made it sound accurate. He conveyed strong emotions. He conveyed the idea that this is true. And for the audience who are not very well aware of the policy details of NAFTA, he made it sound very scary. He appealed to their fear and anxiety, and he sounded like a strong protector who will do something about it. And he kept calling it the worst trade deal ever. And I think this was a moment when Hillary Clinton could have done better, actually. She did better in the later stages of the debate. So this is from the earlier stages of the debate when she didn't do as well. So she did better in the later stages of the debate of having comebacks that were calm in her tone and delivery, but not making her seem angry. So she responded to this claim saying that, well, this is just simply not accurate. If she made a funny comeback, a witty one, like some of the ones that she made later in the debate, she would have been able to be more strategically effective in undermining Trump's claims. For example, if she said, Mr. Trump, I'm impressed that your parents aren't on fire yet, or something like that.
Yeah. Well,
that would have been witty. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was going to say, let's take a listen to Clinton. Again, this is near the beginning of the debate where she's talking about struggling families.
And I want us to do more to support people who are struggling to balance family and work. I've heard from so many of you about the difficult choices you face and the stresses that you're under. So let's have paid family leave, earned sick days. Let's be sure we have affordable child care and debt-free college. How are we going to do it? We're going to do it by having the wealthy pay their fair share and close the corporate loopholes.
So why did you think that maybe wasn't the best thing to say?
Yeah, so here the problem is not with what she says, but how she says it. So we talked about Clinton as a woman not having the access to the range of public emotions that Trump as a man has, just because of the emotional norms of expression in our society and what the research shows happens to women who express anger and frustration. This was a moment when Clinton could have expressed more empathy and caring, and she didn't take this opportunity, and I think this is a lost opportunity. So she could have changed her perception as cold, distant, and inauthentic slightly by injecting more warmth into her voice. For example, when you hear her say words like struggling to balance, she kept an even tone. And when she said difficult, and she said people who are stressed, she kept an even tone. She said those words, those emotional words, in the same way that she talked about policy details later. Now, what if she said that, for example, people for whom it's really difficult to balance family and work, people who are so stressed about their work lives. And that tonality, injecting that warmth into the voice, changing the tone, would have made a really strong impact on listeners. Now, we can't see, obviously, because it's a radio show, Clinton's expression as she did that, but from the debate itself, from what I watched, she also didn't change her face when she said those things. So she didn't do things like open her eyes more to convey empathy and vulnerability when she said things like difficult or stressful. And if she did that, that would have been more impactful for the audience and conveyed a stronger sense of authenticity.
Even the presidential candidates face the same difficulties we all do when it comes to public speaking. We are talking about the different techniques that Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump used during this week's presidential debate, what they did well, the problems they encountered, and we'll talk more about effective techniques we can all use to become better public speakers. And we're welcoming your thoughts, your questions, your ideas, 1-800-642-1234, or send an email to talk@wpr.org. What do you think were some of the strongest or weakest moments in the first presidential debate from all of the candidates? We are talking with our guest, Gleb Tsipursky. Gleb Tsipursky is an assistant professor in the history of behavioral science at Ohio State University. He is the author of a piece that appeared in The Conversation, Trump and Clinton Debate Strategies That Can Make Anyone a Better Public Speaker. Let's take a listen to a clip from near the end of the debate that involves Hillary Clinton taking Donald Trump to task about how he treats women. During it, Trump responds. Let's take a listen.
One of the worst things he said was about a woman in a beauty contest. He loves beauty contests, supporting them and hanging around them. And he called this woman Miss Piggy. Then he called her Miss Housekeeping because she was Latina. Donald, she has a name.
Where did you find
her
this?
name
Where
is
did you find
Alicia
this?
Machado.
Where did you find
and
this?
she has become a U.S. citizen, and you can bet she's going to vote this November.
Okay, good.
So, Professor Tsipursky, what's the problem there?
So it certainly wasn't the problem for Hillary. You can hear her in comparison to her previous speaking, where she talked about people experiencing difficulty and stress, where she didn't put as much emotion into her voice. Here she had more emotion in her voice. You can hear some tonality of outrage and frustration, even though it's, again, challenging for women to express this. And it certainly turned off some listeners, but those were listeners who likely were in the Trump camp anyway. So she was able to make a strong point about her frustration with this issue of Trump using such language, such discriminatory language of fat shaming and the name calling. And Trump responded very poorly. He interrupted her. He was confused. He was flustered. He wasn't sure how to respond well to her point. So he was not responding well, and he wasn't really being on top of the game. So he could have responded much more effectively to that point that Hillary made, but he just didn't do it. So I think he was a little tired out by the end of the debate. He's not used to that long session of debating, and that's one reason why it's important to prepare well for public speaking. So in the article that I talked about public speaking skills, I talked about being well rested, being hydrated, making sure you're in a good state of mind and body for any sort of strenuous activity such as public speaking. And an hour and a half of public speaking in a competitive setting is really important to get well.
Yeah.
So there were things that Hillary did well, and there were things that Donald Trump did poorly.
So let's talk. You talked a little bit about how important preparation is, but what else can we learn about public speaking from this first debate? I know we've talked about them with the individual clips, but if if you were to say here are some tips to glean from the first presidential debate, what are they?
So we talked about emotional expression. I think this is something that people tend to forget about, and this is one of the pro tips that people who have more experience in public speaking always try to convey to people who don't have as much experience in public speaking. Don't focus simply on the content. Focus on your emotions. The first thing to do is always be on top of your mental fitness, on top of your mental game. And Intentional Insights has a lot of content at intentionalinsights.org on how to manage emotions and how to manage your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, because those are, in the end, the only things that we can control in life. So managing those well is going to be fundamentally important to any sort of performance like debating. So not focusing simply on the content, but focusing on yourself, self-management, and conveying those emotions. That's going to be really important. I'm going to let you see if you have follow-up questions, or we can talk about something else.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good tip. But I did want to talk to you before we take a call or to share a Facebook comment about why it is you think so many people are so afraid of public speaking. I talk on the radio every day, but it's different than going in front of an audience. Talk some about that. It's one of our greatest fears.
Sure. And before talking about that, to mention that you talk on the radio, and I'm really happy to be appearing actually on the radio during the pledge drive. I'm a strong supporter of public radio, and I'm really happy to contribute to that through my appearance here. So I encourage listeners to donate to WPR.
You're very kind. Yeah, and so now
Sure.
I'm not as anxious about my public speaking, but talk some about the anxiety that we feel. And you actually say that the anxiety can be a little bit useful.
Yes, so let's talk about why people experience it. People experience it because of fear of rejection and fear of judgment, negative judgment by others. So we evolutionarily adapted to want acceptance and liking from other people. And when we put ourselves out there on a pedestal, especially in front of a lot of people, we don't know what their opinions are of us, and we seem like we are putting ourselves above them. So there's a lot of fear in these power dynamics and social hierarchies, and fear of rejection by, again, putting ourselves above them and outside of the group. And so these are driving a lot of the fear and anxiety around public speaking. And so to deal with that, there are very effective and easy public speaking management skills. There's quick tips for public speaking have been shown by research to really improve people's public speaking skills. And these are, first of all, managing fear and anxiety. I mentioned that's fundamentally important. So you can use various relaxation techniques, like clenching your fists, doing mindfulness, doing deep breathing. That's really important. And then for performance anxiety, preparing for the speech is probably the most important thing you can do. So getting your content right, getting your gestures right, getting your tone right, practicing a lot. Doing visualizations, which is practicing essentially in your mind when you're not actually practicing out loud, and we can delve into that if you wish. Practicing is really important.
We actually are running short on time, but we did want to share. Rick on Facebook says, I have been publicly speaking since 1979. I feel both candidates did not care about what their audience wanted to hear. Instead, they focused on each other and wasted 90 minutes of my life. Oops. I found it's best to leave the ego at home and speak to the audience's needs and wants. He thought Trump was a bully and that Hillary was not genuine. I didn't like either. Well, you want to just respond to his points? He thought that one came across as a bully and the other was not genuine, and we really need to leave our egos at home if we're going to be speaking like this.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. That's if you're trying to serve the whole audience's needs, you definitely want to leave your ego at home. I don't think, let's talk about being a bully with Trump as an example. He wasn't trying to serve the whole audience's needs. He was just trying to serve the audience who he was trying to speak to. His partisans and those who he can sway for appearing authoritative and masculine and powerful as a strong protector. So those were the people he was speaking to. He wasn't speaking to the broad audience as a whole.
And, I think we're going to have to leave it there because we are out of time. Thank you so much for being with us. Gleb Tsipursky is an assistant professor in the history of behavioral science at Ohio State University.